And we're live. What's going on, everybody? Happy Saturday. Hope everybody's having a good weekend out there. I'll have to get these links out. You know the drill. Wasn't feeling real good earlier tonight. I didn't know if I was going to be able to make it on tonight or not. They asked me an hour ago. I yeah, feel a little bit better. So hopefully we feel better. Get sick every time I eat. I don't know what it is. Get sick of eating, I guess. But I got to get these links out there. So what's everybody got going on this weekend? Looks like storms passed through here. Got some craziness going on in some of the cities. There goes some Facebook or YouTube notifications going off there. But let me get these links out there real quick and we can see what's going on with everybody this weekend. Everybody's inside staying safe and away from all the protesting. I don't care which side you're protesting from or for, but you know, crazy out there. So just a minute. I'll be done with these. We can chat it up. Hope Clint's here. I don't know. Is Clint chiming in yet? I don't know. I hadn't heard from Clint. Hopefully he's all right. Didn't see him in chat yet. Hopefully, Clint's all right. Hope he's feeling better or okay. I hate having to do this. I wish I could just push one button and check everything off every group I want to share it to and be done with it, but it's not that easy. Make us jump through hoops to do this. But I gotta get the word out so everybody can see it. So bear with me, chat. Y'all talk amongst yourselves there for a minute. Should be done in just a minute. I hate having to do this, man. This is worst part of every show. Having to take the time to do this. I don't have to talk to Facebook, see if we can't figure out a better way. Because I know sometimes when you share posts and stuff, you want to like share it to groups. It puts up, you know, a box there where you could just pick all the groups that you're in that you want to share it to, and you can just go right down the list and share it. And check the box off and just share at the bottom, and it'll share to all the different groups. But and there it didn't share properly on that page, so I have to go back and do that again. I don't know what causes that either. Maybe I did it too fast. I have to make sure I can share it to everything before I go back, because if you share it twice, that counts as two, and then I'll let you share it so many times before you're considered spamming. I remember it's Christmas. I was trying to wish everybody Merry Christmas, and I was going down through my list, and I guess I've got 3,000 people on my list, and I was trying to, just go down through there and wish everybody Merry Christmas. I was going to spend the afternoons, take a couple hours and do that, and they stopped me, said I was spamming, I guess. It won't let me do too many more anyway, so we'll have to see here. So Mark's had a podcast going, so I can't. I have to wait till he's done to share it on his page. I'm about done. I do have to go back and fix that one link I posted. It was wrong. I don't know what happened on that. We'll get it taken care of. There, that's better. I'll just wait on that one. Let's see. We got that one taken care of. Open up. Keep the militia page open so I see what's going on in there. All right. I don't know why. Sometimes when you post in some of these groups, your post automatically starts dropping down, and there's posts that was made 4 hours ago that's ahead of yours. I think it should be chronological, but it's not. What's going on, O'Sheen? Hi, brother. I'm doing all right. I'm better than I was an hour ago. I can say that. I wasn't feeling too good. I stayed up late and didn't get a lot of good rest, and ate a big breakfast and went back to sleep and slept on all that breakfast and that sausage and gravy and biscuits and eggs and bacon and all that heavy grease. And I slept on that, and I don't know. I woke up bad, feeling bad. Yeah, it passed up here earlier, man. It's big storm, big wave. What's going on, Jason? Good to see you, brother. Scott, what's happening, brother? Good to see you. Good evening. What's going on, Mr. Curtis? Clint's in the house. Where the hell were you, brother? 2 minutes late. 2 demerits. -2 stars. Done so well. Yeah, he was MIA for a while there. We was worried about him. I figured he must be out chasing some women or something somewhere. Yeah, he's gotta be fashionably late. Worry us all. Make us all. Where's Clint? What's going on? I'm just gonna call you Bad. Building a drink. Bad. What's going on, Bad? Good to see you. Yeah, I've had better days, that's for sure. An hour ago, man, I was ill. Man, my stomach. First gin sour mash bubble. That's good to hear. What's going on, Jay? What's up, Hillbilly? What's going on, brother? I think if I took a shot, I'd feel a little better. What? I mean, I need to work on that. What's going on, Mud Grips? Yes, sir. We are live as we can be. A little behind already, but yeah, we're live. Actually, I'm caught up. Yeah, we're live. So if you got questions, man, ask them. That's what we're here for. I'm gonna have to take me a little hoard of this. Oh, it's honey shine. Frozen berry recipes. Now you're talking about for like post flavoring or for fermenting to make a brandy? Jason, making a brandy. Yeah, a lot of people definitely should freeze your berries. Berries are definitely a good thing to freeze. Not if you're going to make, desserts out of them or jellies out of them, but if you plan on making a brandy or a wine out of them, it's really good to freeze them because otherwise it makes the texture mushy. The berries real mushy. So if you freeze them and then try to bring them out and use them for a pie or jellies or sprinkle them on, your ice cream or whatever you do want to do with them, it gets them really mushy, and they're not good usually when they come out of the freezer like that. But for winemaking and brandy making, it helps a lot because a lot of that moisture and water that's inside all those little teeny tiny berries that makes up the whole berry freezes, and they kind of expand, and it'll open up that cell, or that little, I don't know, what do you call it, pustule or whatever, a little bead of a berry, I guess. I don't know what I've never looked at the anatomy of a berry. What's each of those little individual berries called? I don't know. Berry, a berry on a berry. But those freeze and they open up, they expand, and it busts them open, and that's how you can muddle them much easier and get at the juice, of them. So that works real well, and if with berries, especially if you can do that and you can muddle them good, you really don't need pectic enzymes on them because you can get most of the juice out of them that way, right? So you don't really need to use the pectic enzymes because that's just gonna, a lot of times just create a little bit more heads for you, and it's really not necessary. But like in, fruits like apples, uh, peaches, anything that's really meaty, um, cherries, even anything that's got a lot of meat to it, like berries is just pretty much just the berry shell and then the juice inside. So not much, for those, but like grapes, peaches, anything that's got a lot of fleshy, fruits, yeah, you need to use your pectic enzymes to help break those up and break down the pectin in them, and get you sugars out of it. Yeah, there's some really good recipes. I need to spend some time. I've got a lot of recipes that I kind of need to neuter, as we say, and a lot of these recipes have been copied and pasted and watermarked and copied and pasted, and people take credit for them and stuff. And there's been thousands that have been done that way. Um, but what we basically do, we go in and copy paste it and just make a little recipe book out of it. They're pretty much all the same. It's just how many berries per gallon. And trying to what you really want to do is try to use as much of the natural juice as you can and as little water as you can, because the more water you use, you're just kind of diluting everything, and you dilute the sugars, you dilute the flavor, and especially if you're making wines, with a brandy, you can kind of, if it's, you can add a little bit of sugar and get your gravity up, and distill it out and get the alcohol out of it that you need. But if you're making a wine, you really need to take advantage of all that natural juice flavor that you can to make it a good wine. And of course, if you make a good wine, it's going to help translate into a good brandy. But using a lot of the berries too, the frozen berries, and adding some sugar to them and making a little slurry that you can put in your infuser, that helps a lot too. You definitely need to keep some berries aside. Don't use them all, in the brandy process. Keep a bag or two frozen, and that way you can thaw them out, add some sugar, make that slurry, and have something to flavor, your infuser with. Also, frozen concentrate works real well in your fruit infusers too. It's already got the sweet sugar in it. It's got all the flavor that's concentrated, right? So those help too, and those help make your wines as well. So anytime you got fruit, you can add some of those concentrates to it and get a little bit more sugar and get some concentrated flavors, and it definitely makes your wines better. It makes them a lot more flavorful. But yeah, going to try to in the DIY, and the Militia page, they try to keep all the recipes kind of neutered, I guess you could say, that kind of keep all the names off of them, all the watermarks and all that kind of stuff. So it takes a little time to go in there and clean them up. Um, DIY page, I'll just post them. I don't care. People can take credit for whatever, copy and paste they've done in the past and whatever. If it's, I've got a Stampede Steel recipe book in there from ages back, and you know, we'll try to get some more recipes in there. But I do want to encourage people in the group, in the DIY group, and in militia group. If you got questions, ask them. Just like here. That's what those groups are for, is to help people, and jump in there, and nobody's going to jump you, and belittle you, and so that's the stupidest question. Oh, you're a newbie and all this stuff. So that's why we formed these groups, to get away from that, because that's what happens in a lot of the other groups. So we see that happening. If you're in there and you want to do that, don't, because we'll remove you in a heartbeat. Don't belittle people. Don't be mean. Don't be mean hearted. If you frustrated with the same question over and over again, just scroll on past. I'll answer the same question 1,000 times, because everybody has the same questions, and everybody needs them answered, right? So when they start, none of us were born with this knowledge. We've all learned it, and we've all asked the questions, and we've all had them answered one way or the other, whether through research or, this is, a lot of people, I don't like people saying, oh, just Google it. Don't just Google it. Why are you asking here? Well, that's because that's what this show and podcast and what the groups are for, is a place for people to come ask the questions of, to people that they can actually talk to one-on-one, and not just listen to some idiot on Reddit that doesn't know what they're talking about, right? And giving you bad information that they Googled somewhere else, and so a lot of times this bad information just keeps snowballing, and it's kind of like that little lie. You hear it often enough, you start believing that it's the truth, right? And it's the same way with a lot of disinformation, in the communities and stuff. Everybody repeats a lot of this false information and stuff, and they keep hearing it from different places, repeated over and over and over again, and they start believing it to be right, and then they start, well, I assume that's right, and then they start answering, and helping people and telling them that, thinking that's the right answer. So you can't just blame them, for doing that, because they picked it up, doing some research. It's just, sometimes it's just patently false, right? Certain things, so. Um, so we try to, help everybody, and in the groups, that's what they're for. We're getting a lot of new people in the DIY Shine and Steel Building page, and it's wonderful. Love having all the new people there. But if I'm not sure that they know what it's for. On that page, right there where it says, let me pull up a page here. At the very top of the page where it says write something, any question you have, you can, post a picture, if you got a question. If you've got something that you've done you're proud of, you can post it. As long as it's on topic, post it. Stay away from any political and all that crap. But yeah, anything that has to do with, the industry, liquor industry, beer, wine, distilling, post it, and so we can talk about it. If you got questions, definitely post them. Getting a lot of new people in, and I think a lot of them are there hoping other people will ask the questions and they can just hear them. And but if they don't, yep, yeah, they break down the cell walls. It busts that little, like in a berry. It's just like hundreds of little berries all gathered together in one big berry, right? And each of those little tiny berries, it'll help break those up. Now, muddling, will do the same, but you gotta, almost have to, puree them, and that works fine. With berries, just put them in a blender, break them down, and after you freeze them. But you really don't need the pectic enzymes with the berries once you get them all muddled out good and blended and broken down. But stuff like peaches and some of the other stuff you do, it just breaks that cell wall out. And that's why a lot of people use the pectic enzymes, is to break down those pectins and open them up, and to help expose, a lot of the sugars, and break down the pectins, and open them up, so you can, expose the sugars, and get the juice out of it. And it's amazing what pectic enzymes do to, like, peach pure. You get a bunch of peaches, right? And you just puree them up and throw them in a pot, and they're like really soupy, thick, slimy. It's just it's a mess. And you put those pectic enzymes on it, let them sit about 24 hours, 36 hours, and next thing you know, it's like, wow, and all the pulp, man, it's almost all juice now, and it's like, where did it go? And so it breaks down a lot of that, and it really helps a lot. So Clint's stripping tomorrow, huh? I have a question about column stills. Is a sugar wash the most effective mash? Don't know if you're getting a lot of flavor. No, you're not going to get any flavor out of a sugar wash. Um, Flavor, so it's most efficient mash to run for. It's probably one the easiest. It's basically very simple: sugar, water, nutrient, yeast, and some oyster shells. Right? Um, so it's very simple. It's very simplistic, but it makes for hot liquor. Flavors, you're going to get some flavor, and that's basically from the yeast and from stresses and from just the fermentation process. So you're going to get some, and hopefully not off flavors if you keep all your conditions as well as you can. But sugar washes tend to stress yeast for sure, and certain yeast more than others, right? So careful consideration. A lot of people like using turbo yeast for that. I've never been a big turbo fan, but it does have a lot of nutrients in it. I think that's one of the problems with maybe a turbo yeast is it's over. It has too much nutrients in it, right? And that can be as problematic as not enough. So you got to make sure that you get some nutrients in there in a sugar wash because there's absolutely nothing to feed the yeast. But don't overdo it and kind of step feed it, over a few day period and put those oyster shells in there, keep it buffered. But it just a big rush, for the yeast. It's just full blast, and it's kind of puts a little bit of stress on it, so you get some flavored off flavors from the yeast and yeast flavors. But you don't see a lot of sugar vodkas on the market for a reason, and a lot of times they're made with wheat, potatoes, and it just makes for a smoother liquor. There's a lot of bite to a sugar liquor like that. So even though that you distill it to 190 plus to make that vodka and then proof it down, it will still have that harsh bite. Whereas if you make it with like a wheat, you get some sweetness, a little bit more character to it. Potatoes, you can get a little bit, smoother, flavor and taste and less bite. So um, efficient, yeah, but most effective, it depends on what your goal is. If your goal is simplicity, low cost, quick, it certainly fits the bill. And if you just want something to drink, you don't care how hot it is, it certainly fits the bill for that. I made a lot of sugar runs back in the days, just to make some liquor and didn't have anything else to make with use. So it's something fine, but um, there are better ways to make a neutral that will have better flavor. So if you want to use a wheat or a potato or a corn, any of those grains you can make a vodka with, and it's going to be a little smoother for you. So I say the most easiest, probably, yeah, but probably the best would be a corn or a wheat. you know yeah, yeah, they do, man. I'm telling you, those sugar washes really stress the yeast, and those organic acids get produced pretty quickly, and as a result, and when they do, that pH drops pretty quickly, and there's a lot of, it's easy to get a stuck fermentation. Especially, I think one of the biggest problems also is people use too much sugar. when they do a sugar wash. They don't get the good starting gravity 107, 080 max, and they do that 1.1 or 1.102 or whatever, 1.12 or something like that, and it really really hard, and it's pushing the yeast. It's high proof. And it really really pushes it, and it's just it and the more, the higher it goes, the more acid and the more you're going to need those oyster shells for sure. But yeah, they definitely work. They help, for sure. And they make the 5.2 in a little bottle that you can buy, and you can add that, but it's just the same thing. It's calcium carbonate. So either you spend a lot of money on that little bottle, or you spend $13 on a big 40-50 pound bag, and have some to put in your washes. And if you grow tomatoes, you can crush them up and add them to the soil. It works real well for those. And as before you plant them, and if you start getting spots mid-season, or later in the season, you can sprinkle some dust on and water it in, and it helps a lot. But there are other calcium um, products that you can use for too. I like using them for my tomatoes, so it works well. What's going on, Ty? Good to see you, man. Happy New Year to you, brother. Yeah, hopefully 2026 is better than 2025. It's not necessarily that 2025 is bad. We just want each year to get better, right? Right. Yeah, you can, yeah, like Clint's talking about, when people, take sap out of these trees, it's basically water, right? And you slowly cook it and cook off all the water, and it just builds and builds, and you get sweeter and sweeter until eventually you get a syrup, right? And that's how we get our maple syrup and all those things. So if you can do the same thing with a juice, especially some of these weak juices, absolutely, you can concentrate them, or you can just buy the frozen concentrate and use the juice instead of water. A lot of times, you know, people making apple brandy will get a bunch of apples and grind them up and get the juice, and then they'll start adding water. Buy that apple juice. Just use that instead. It's cheap as dirt, and really, you know, I think it takes like 20 to 22 pounds of apples to make a gallon of juice, and those gallons are pretty damn cheap, and it's a lot cheaper than 20 pounds of apples unless you're getting them free or really cheap. So yes, use some juices, and it's okay to use like an apple juice and something else, other fruit. It's not going to carry that apple flavor forward, but it will keep, it'll keep it smoother. It adds flavor, and concentrates work real well with the juice too. So adding the juices and the concentrate, and just like with grape, the grape juice. There's white and there's the red Welch's, 100%. No preservatives added type juices. Those work great. A little bit more expensive, but cheaper than the fruit. Yep, I agree, 100%. You can add those concentrates, and I think apple juice is like 1040. Most apple juices that I've always used in the past, get the preservative 100% juice, right? And it's generally around 1040. So they've sugared it up, a little bit, and it's 1040. And so it helps. It's not going to boost the sugar a lot. It's just going to keep you from diluting flavors by adding just water that adds absolutely no flavor, no sugar, no nothing. So instead of adding water, add juices and concentrates, and that'll those concentrates will bring that 1040 up to 106070 where you want to be without any sugar at all. There is sugar in the concentrates, but it works pretty well. What's going on, Glory? Good to see you, brother. Yeah, you can get it. But yeah, running it through the column and getting that neutral, running it to 190 plus proof to make it technically a vodka. If it's 186 or 185 or in the mid 180s, okay, it's technically, by the standards, not truly a vodka, but it's close to damn enough, right? So it might not be the meet the TTB standards, but it's still pretty going to be pretty neutral, and actually may still have some flavor. Whereas, but yeah, I've made some pretty good vodka that blows Tito's away. You know, I share it with people, and they're like, "Wow, that's so much better." And you don't really notice it much until you do a shot side by side. I'm like, "Yeah, here, try this Tito's, and then try this," and then they try one and then the other. I'm like, "Whoa, wait, let me have that again." And they're like, "Damn, it makes Tito's look." And a lot of these other vodkas look bad. I shouldn't use Tito's because that's not really one of the better vodkas out there. But what's going on, JJ? Good to see you. Damn, I'm behind already. Wait, how in the world? Jeez. What's going on, Jeff? Good to see you, brother. Yeah, enjoy helping people, man. That's what we're here for. I make absolutely not one penny. Never made the first penny from any online anybody, you know, or don't get money from Facebook or YouTube or any of that. Wouldn't even know how to if I wanted to. But no, I'm just here to help out, pass the knowledge down, and make the hobby a little more enjoyable and fun for everybody. And I enjoy getting on here and talking with everybody. All right, how do I get water hammer to produce cavitation as a heating element in a Stirling engine? Um, we talking distillation here? You got me kind of stumped here. So you're talking about an alcohol burner? Yeah, I'm not real up on those, bro. Yeah, it's not really the distilling. That's an actual engine. I'm looking at a video on it. Yeah, I don't know. At the heating element cavitation, I'm sure that this engine heats alcohol to the point of where it gets hot enough to where it's explosive. Looking at a little video, actually pretty cool little engines. Uh, but I've never made one. I see the little candle and I see how it heats up the alcohol and it creates that vapor, right? So alcohol, we talked about this last week, even 60 proof alcohol becomes flammable if you get hot enough. So the hotter the alcohol is, the more vapor, but also uh, there is. But the higher the proof, the lower, the lower temperature that you're going to require to get it to that. But um, this basically operates on a little candle, and I don't, I've never played with those. I don't know, brother. Wish I could help you. Pretty cool little engines, though. I've seen it before. I wasn't sure what you were talking about. Actually, I thought a Stirling engine was in an airplane. I was thinking of pretty sure there's a Stirling engine that goes into an airplane, uh, old time airplane from way back. But yeah, looking at this, I've always thought they're pretty cool, but I've never built one, never dabbled with them. But I've always enjoyed watching the videos and watching them run. Is it better to flavor during a run or post run? Is there a difference besides potential changes to color? Yeah, the concentration of flavors is going to be much greater if you post flavor. In the past, that was kind of a big no-no amongst moonshiners, and distillers. You got to try to get that flavor coming off the tap, off the drip. But this day and time, things have changed. If we look at the industry as a whole, we see a lot of in the paper every day right now. Bourbon. A lot of bourbon places, feeling the pinch, and a lot of people say, tariffs. I'm going to blame, politics and left and right and all that. But a lot of it, it's most of it is people are changing. People's tastes are changing. Fewer young people are drinking, and the ones that are drinking more canned type, alcohols that is more convenient, and a lot of post flavored stuff. So they're less. They could care less about the process. Hopefully that changes, and we can maintain some of these good quality um, drinks, and it all doesn't just go to vodkas and fruit juices. But it's whatever you like, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with a vodka and a fruit juice. I love them. Very flavorful. You got the alcohol in there, and you got a good sweet flavored juice, and who cares if it's not clear? It tastes good. So if you're at a bar and somebody mixes the drink in front of you, how's that any different than your distiller mixing it and putting it in a bottle for you? So I think a lot of those opinions on that are changing. I used to be one of those that, no, it's got to be clear right off the tap. No, and but as people change, taste change, it's times are changing, and I like those drinks. I like a lot of them. Like Damon's Sour Patch. It's sour and sweet as hell, and post to the gills, it's red as a beet, and it's good. It's a good sweet and sour type drink, and it's very flavorful. But so tastes are changing. And post flavoring is definitely the way. If you want a lot of flavor, you're going to get it post flavoring, and it's a lot easier. So some people say, "Oh, you're cheating," but it's what the end user wants. So you can take some really good fruit juices and put some vodkas in there and make some really great drinks, and that's what a lot of people are going for these days. Okay, butter basically helps break the surface tension, and it helps put some oil on there, and it helps keep the foam down. So if you ever like just boil water, just boiling eggs or something, and make hard boiled eggs or something, even the just pure water will foam up on you. So you know what a beer is going to do, right? When you've got a beer that you basically made, yes, or mash, or grain mashes or beers, right? So there's going to be some sudzies, and not quite as much as if it were gassed up, but yeah, there is some CO2 in there, and it does get fizzy. Even the wines get fizzy, and you have to degas them, right? So um, yeah, the stick of butter, it just helps keep the foaming down. And the same thing, if you boil the eggs, or boil hard boiled eggs, a little vegetable oil in there or butter, either one, will, just a little bit will help keep all that foaming down. So yeah, distilled your rum wash. Awesome, awesome. And finish the spirit run. I saved some of the wash. I want to flavor the rum with some natural ingredients. Well, that's cool. Recommendations. Sky's the limit, man. I mean, what do you like? I mean, there's so many good. I'll start with like Tyranny and Monin, and make some good. Like mixology. This is like bartending, right? So Look what they use. There's grenadine. There's a lot of different caramel. Tyranny. Look up Tyranny and Monum. It's what a lot of bartenders use. Hold on a second. Let me go grab a couple. All right, I had to go to the old bar. But yeah, like you got your grenadine, right? Those make some pretty interesting flavors. Salted caramel, that's a really good one. You can make some caramel. Uh, Classic hazelnut. Everybody likes hazelnut. That's pretty good little flavors there. Peach. Get some peach flavors, and then vanilla. And you can use some of these in combination, like salted caramel and vanilla, right? So that makes a pretty good combo. So there's a lot of these that you can use. Strangely enough, you can also get candy, like caramel, just caramel candy, or you can make some caramel. You can take some sugar and caramelize it and add a shot or two of vanilla and, make some homemade, caramel and add that. Very good. Um, just so many things. You can take hard candies. A lot of people like taking these Jolly Ranchers even. It depends on, what you want. I've seen people use Kool-Aids and fruit juices, and there's just, the sky's the limit. So with the rum, or you can do a spiced rum, so you can start doing some research on the different spices that people, steep their rums in to get a spiced rum. A lot of people really into the spiced rum, so you can, start learning to steep. I will say that, start steeping slowly and pull it out and test it, because it's easy to kind of get overpowered with some of the botanicals. But there's so many things, Brian, that you can do. It's a lot of fun. But I would say, with rum for me, I like caramel. I like the salted caramel real well. Um, and even adding some other caramel candies and letting them dissolve in there and thicken it up, and it'll give it color, if that doesn't bother you, but some people can't have that. But yeah, there's a lot of things you can do, a lot of spice drums, and there's no rules. You can make it any way you want to, and add a lot of spices. And if you try spices, sometimes it's like, whoa, I had way too many cloves. And there's certain ones that you'll learn that you want to back off. So it's probably good to, test it by the little half pint jars and little bits of spice, just muddle it in there and put it in there, and and let that work. Any hard candies, anything like that. But yeah, the spices, do it in small jars. That way you can kind of just sample it and see what you're gonna get, and see which of these spices really overpower and that you need to cut back on the use of, like cloves, and cinnamon, being a couple of the most strong ones. Did pretty good, JJ. Hour and a half ago, man, I wouldn't have said that. Awesome. Well, I'd say it's got some pretty good flavor as it is, being just molasses. I love the flavor of that molasses. It gives it a good, grungy, dark flavor that I love, and a lot of Yeah, it helps a lot. But you know, putting a little bit of few taps of butter in there certainly helps a lot. Or just you know, oil, vegetable oil, you know, that'll work as well too. It's just the oil basically getting on the surface of the steel and help to keep that foam down. Cuts the surface tension and helps break that foam down. Yeah, the pectic enzymes does help clear the pectic haze, and it helps clearing. It's a clearing agent as well, so it certainly helps. You know, your wines get clear quicker. Sure, good point, bro. Yeah, yeah, it goes in right in your boiler, right as you're pouring it all your mash. You got it cleared, and you poured it into the boiler, and you're warming it up, getting ready to put the cap on and do all that. Then you can just add a little oil or your butter. Poutine, there you go. Yeah, little Irish vodka. How's it going over there in Ireland? Tito's made with corn. Yeah, yeah, and it's you know it's an inexpensive way to make a vodka, and that's a lot of marketing. You know, it's I can smoke a Tito vodka. Yeah, I'm sorry, here, boo. I'm a little bit behind. I try to answer all these posts. I get a little about 20 minutes behind, but we'll get you, brother. Yeah, turbo yeast was essentially designed for fuel, right? But there's some that have kind of branched off and people use and swear by, but I try to stay away from them. But if you're going to make a neutral, you know, if that would be about the only way I would ever use one. But it's best just to use your own nutrients in a decent yeast than to use the turbo. But I know a lot of people try to use those and not the best. Not too going on. So you think Tito's is? I tell you, man, I can smoke it with mine. Mine's much better. You think Tito's is the best? I don't know, man. I don't know. I used to be a pretty good absolute. I like that absolute pretty well. Yeah, yeah, man. So what you got going on over there in Ireland? You making that poutine, huh? Or poutine? Guess that's a potato based. EH510ED. I might check that. What is that? Yeast? EH510ED? Sounds like yeast, maybe. Oh, it's postal code. And the bonus. So that's where you're from. I see. Cool. Hamilton lands, huh? Cool. Yeah, I got some Hamilton friends. Yeah, my family's originally from Scotland and Ireland, most of them. High proof, you know, it's great to to make a vodka. You have to get like 194.5 proof for it technically to be a vodka. And I'd say it depends on what we're talking about here, Boo. If you're talking a brandy, you know, no, I would rather it come off a low proof. Whiskeys, I'd rather come off, 130 uh, with a lot of flavor than a higher proof. It seems like the higher proof you get, the less and less flavor you get. As it goes up higher, higher, it just seems less and less and less. And there is some sweet spots depending on the distillate that you have that, that have that proof and still maintain a certain amount of flavor. That's kind of a perfect spot. But and again, if you come out, uh, off the still at 80 proof, that's not that good either, right? Because it's too much water. And um, right, yeah, percent's double the proof, right? So 100% is 200 proof, right? We know you can't quite get there, so yep. Yeah, let's have a shot. Here, boo. Steve, brother, and our Irish friends over there. Oh, jailhouse hooch, huh? Yeah, I've heard of that jailhouse stuff. It's not very good. Shells, well, sometimes, well, now you gotta be careful about that. I've never had really that big a problem. I've never had a lot of particles carry over. Yeah, so you're talking about freeze distillation? Yeah, that's prison one. They get that cider and ferment it, and then freeze it and make that apple jack. What we call apple jack here, boo. We call that apple jack over here. Yeah, called jacking. I think that actually may be an Irish term or a Scottish term, jacking, because that goes way back. Freezing wines to raise the proof. And crazy enough, here in the States, they call that distilling, right? So that's just silly. Yeah, yeah, definitely. Yeah, definitely. I keep mine in I put mine in a cheesecloth pouch. So I wrap them up and do that. So I've not really had a lot of getting loose. So I don't put them in there loosely. Put them in a brew bag or that. And I do not use the powder. So I try to rinse them and boil them and get all the powder out. I say the powder for planting and for my tomatoes and stuff that's in the bottom. So I try to, shake it free and get just the shells and put those and rinse them and boil them real good. And that'll get a lot of the powder and a lot of the small fine stuff off that you have to worry about. But yeah, I've jacked to about 60 easy. Yeah, not a problem. Yeah, yeah. Had a little jailhouse hooch. I got you. Yeah, it's easy to make a little jailhouse wine. You know, you can ferment about anything, man. I've seen them. Hell, you can ferment paper if you if you got the right enzymes. Yeah, we drink that moonshine. Now, 60 proof is 30%, right? What's going on, DJ? Let's see, brother. So you adding caffeine to it? Oh hell. Yes, antique collection. Yeah, there you go. Man, I'm so far behind. My goodness. Yeah. I'm behind, bro. So I have to take the questions as they're asked. So I can only do, one at a time. Clint will handle a lot of them, but you know, I as they come, I try to answer them, and I'll scroll and uh, so I'm trying to scroll and get caught up. I'm getting a lot of. I was wondering how I got behind so quickly, and I don't know. Yeah, boo, we're here for Q&A, man. So you want recipes? Got to join the group, man. Join DIY Shine and Steel Building or Moonshine Militia on Facebook. And in the files, we got a lot of recipes, brother. So what do you want to learn how to make? Right, and that's becoming very popular. DJ these days. Canned drinks is about as popular as some of the best bourbons in the world. It's a shame, but yeah. What's going on, Steve? Good to see you, brother. Hope y'all are doing good. Awesome to hear. Awesome to hear. Got that pistol string. Good, good. Nothing more rewarding than getting to the drip, right? It's a lot of work, a lot of time and patience. That's people ask me what's the most important thing in making wines, brandies, and distilling. And this is patience, having patience, and not trying to rush things. Because anytime you try to rush it, I don't care whether it's trying to add sugar to make it go faster or get hotter or trying to barrel age or whatever, anytime you try to rush it and especially in winemaking, it only impacts it in a negative way. So slow ferments is what you want, lower temperatures, where the actual yeast want it slow. So we're not using bread yeast or distiller's yeast. We're using more wine yeast and slowing the process down and just have to have a lot of patience to make that good brandy. Yeah. Oh, yeah. It was, back in the day, it was, we used to, when I wasn't making it, because I didn't make it all the time, but there was a bootlegger over on Town Mountain everybody went to, and you could get peach or grape, and you buy, pint of shine, and there'd always be half a peach in there, and it'd be clear, there wouldn't be any post other than just that piece of fruit, or there'd be grapes in there, always some white grapes. And I don't know, I'm guessing that helped hide some of the improper cuts, but it wasn't a bad shine. It was pretty decent shine considered. It was high proof, usually around 130. I would guesstimate, looking back, I didn't have a hydrometer or proof hydrometer then, but looking back, based on what I know now, it's probably around 130 proof. It was good. Wasn't a bad shine that fella made over there, and he made a lot of money. He was probably the most popular bootlegger in town, and at his house, you just drive up, and he lived on the side of a mountain. You just kind of drive around his house. They'd walk out and get what you want, and they just drive around on out. Same at Moorhead, and I was getting some shine there. I didn't make any shine while I was in college there at Moorhead, but we'd go get some shine and a little weed from this one guy, and he always had good shine and weed. Just drive around that house and walk out what you want, and go back in, bring you out whatever you needed. And I don't, other than being a tax evader, everybody should be able to do that. If you want to do that, fine. Just make, just pay your taxes and go on with it. We shouldn't have to get all these damn permits and all this shit to do it, Yeah. Yeah, they don't know what moonshine is. And it's anymore, just moonshine gets a collective, moniker because of everything illegal tax. So I try to get away from a moonshine name. I try to, it's rum, it's vodka, it's tequila, it's whiskey, it's white dog, and I try to get away from naming anything moonshine anymore because people associate moonshine with improper cut corn liquor that is high proof and high heads. that's what that's what most people associate with moonshine is somebody that pitched only the four shots, right? Just the first little jar that came off, the first little bit that came off the still. So you got all the heads, a lot of the heads in there. So maybe from mid heads on down, and high to mid tails on up, all mixed in a vat, stirred up, and and with corn, corn liquor, and that's what most people associate with moonshine, and sold at about 130 proof hot, and that's what most people, when you mention moonshine, all my friends and stuff that are from other towns and places that are not, it's not common, you mention moonshine, oh Lord, oh God, man, that stuff tastes horrible. It's hot. It's high proof. It'll burn all the way down. All this, and then you give them something, and you give them some rum or some vodka or something that you make, and or some whatever, and they're like, "Wow, this is not like the moonshine I'm used to," and it's like it's the moonshine is just I don't know. I guess moonshine is, a lot of people call it in untaxed liquor, but really it's improperly cut corn liquor is basically what a moonshine is, to most people, that aren't from, you know, that don't know distilling and all the different things that we make. Awesome, awesome. So you're getting ready to stop the fermentation and keep it a little bit sweet. Is that what you mean by your tablets? You want to stop that fermentation? A little potassium sorbate or metabisulfate. Yeah, they will. Yeah, and that's there's a beer maker talking. Yeah, talking about that protein haze and foams. Yeah, it does. It does. It really does. And that's why, you can degas if you want to, right before you run it. And after you, of course, clear, siphon off the clears or pump off the clears, you can take that drill and go in there and go at it and degas, and I do that to a lot of wines and stuff, and get a lot of the CO2 out of the wines before it goes into bottling, right? So, you want to, the red wines especially, you want to kind of get those flat. You don't want to everything. You don't want a sparkling wine, right? When you're bottling, and so you stop the fermentation, but there's still a lot of CO2 built up in there. And if you don't take care of it and degas it, then you just got a sparkling wine, right? So yeah, you got to degas it. But yeah, the proteins foam. Hell, just water alone foams, Mango, yeah, that's good flavor. There's a lot of good fruits to add to rums, Yeah, I mean, it's sky's the limit. But I do like like a hazelnut. I guess that's why I got these, because they're kind of my favorite. I like the caramel, like the hazelnut, like the vanilla. You can kind of mix those two together. I keep that peach just to help my peach that didn't taste like peach, but it made it nice and red. But um, I've got some Olive Nation stuff too. That's kind of, I don't know. Next Olive Nation I get, I'm gonna get the sugar instead of the sugar-free kind of variety, because that sugar-free stuff, I don't know, that the sweetener in it just, it carries over heavily, but it's, I mean, it's not bad, but it's just distinctive, and it didn't carry any peach over. It just carried that's artificial sweetener over. It is good. I agree. You know, butterscotch works real well. Sure does. Yeah, hard candies work great. You know, peppermint, spearmint candies. You know, Jolly Ranchers work well if you like those flavors. You know, dissolve them up, shake them up, and then you know you always get a little floaties with it. Just pour it through a coffee filter and fit funnel, and you know take a little time, but you got to get all those little floaties out of it. It makes it good. I like it. Like Damon's Sour Patch. You know, it's just basically I guess there's some kind of watermelon and sour, and then I guess he just sweetens it, and it's pretty damn good. Hazelnut rum, there you go, man. And almonds are pretty cheap anymore. You know, you can get some almonds cheap. You got to be careful with them because I guess there's some toxins associated with them. You know, I've never really understood that. I don't know much about the almonds, but uh, they've got a lot cheaper in recent years. I guess they used to be a fairly expensive nut, and I guess a lot of people planted a bunch of trees, and I know California produces a lot. Um, but it's like they've gotten real cheap, I guess, because they've got so many, you know, grows and stuff out there, and it's just maybe the growing season is really good, and they're producing heavy. But yeah, you know, they're relatively inexpensive now too. So almonds, hazelnut, yeah, yeah, the candy canes. That's what I do. There's, you know, Christmas. I'll put some of those little candy canes, the green ones and the red and white ones, and the spearmint, the peppermint ones, and it's good. You know, it makes good. Or there's yeah, anything works well. Well, now natural fruits. But yeah, I'd say spices. You know, if you want to use botanicals and make a spice rum, that's really interesting. Orange peels, absolutely. Lemon peels, orange peels. You make some limoncello rum. It's good. Orange peels or zest. You know, you can actually get you one of those little files and just file off the zest and keep the bitter white part out of it and lose some of the bitterness and you carry some more flavor over that way. It's no, I guess a lot of the cooks, do it that way to. Yeah, yeah, absolutely, yeah, yeah, and definitely, a little aged rum for sure. Put some rum in a barrel. Definitely good. Awesome, that's good. Yeah, I think anywhere from 130 to 145 is good. You're getting a good flavor. It's not crazy high. Doesn't require a lot of proofing down to go in a barrel or anything, or proofing down period. You get a lot of good flavor off of it. Hell yeah. Yeah, salt will hurt yeast. Certainly, certainly does. Yeah, any kind of sodium. So even your sodium bicarbonate and all that, when you have to use it, if you get to that point and you forgot your oyster shells, even that sodium bicarbonate will definitely hurt your yeast and stress them. But if your pH is getting into the twos, and you're at the beginning or middle of the fermentation and it's not almost done, then it's kind of the lesser of the evils, right? 143 off a football. Well, you can get a little reflux on that football. You can wrap you a cold towel around it, and I've heard people putting fans on them. Yeah, you just use the tortilla chips. Basically, when you use a cornmeal, you're using what that was made in the chip, right? So it's basically just a flour made from the cornmeal and mixed with water, rolled out, and then of course they got a lot of flavors that they add sometimes and preservatives and things like that. But yeah, it's just not needed. Just use your meal and yeah, just the old yellow corn. Yeah, absolutely. And now that far behind, damn. Yeah, I like absolutes. Tito's is pretty inexpensive though. It's good for the money. It's good. Yeah, absolutely. And cinnamon, you can add cinnamon to your thumpers, but just be sure not to put too much in there because it will overpower really easily. Yeah, man, I love me some blackberry wine for sure. Or just put a column on your bever. Just take that football off there and put a column on it. I've got 187 or something, 100 mid, 185, 187, just with a typical. Well, let me pull up here. I didn't get my pictures. I should do that before I start every time, so I'll have them ready before I queue up. So with just one of these guys, I can get 185 putting that right there on the bever. You get cold enough water going into that deflagmator and put you some copper mesh in there to help reflux, and I can pull 185 with that right there alone on a bever with cold water going into that to that deflamator or deflagmator, however you want to pronounce it. But now that I've got, let's see. I don't think I have that pic. I need to get me a picture of it. Yeah, I don't have a picture of it. I got me a new bubble plate column. And I don't have a picture of the type it is. I need to looking through my files here to see if I can find one. I thought I had one. Yeah, here we go. I got this now. So, adding that to a bever and having a good deflagmator on top of that, yeah, all day long. Set that right on top of the football with a 2.5 to 4 and deflamator, easy. So yeah, the basically the beverage is just a boiler, and what you put on top of it. Now I do have to have support, so there are some supports that I put a little hook on the ceiling and a big heavy gauge wire run down to help support and hold the weight of a lot of the stuff that I put on top of that bever, which is, I guess, one of the downfalls. It's not thick, right? If they made it with twice the gauge, the thickness that they use, man, it'd be awesome. A little heavier duty. Um, it'd definitely be worth the extra investment to have one that's sturdier and the lid sturdier. Because if I were to say, what was the biggest downfall, be two things: it's thin, flimsy, and getting those gaskets that go around the lid. like finding hen's teeth. You know, I don't know if anybody ever found one. Yeah, you can fortify your wines with some high proof. Yeah, if you want to. Yeah, it makes it more stringency. You know, and you know it's whatever you like though. I mean, if you want a higher proof, you can just basically just age the wine, and then when it comes to time to have a drink, just pour some wine and then pour a shot on it. Right? That'll help. Probably, I don't know, aging with that extra alcohol. You know, may cause some interesting things to happen. You know, make sure you get a good cut. Yeah, it's just called fortified wine. Well, the tablets, you're stopping fermentation, right? When you add the tablets, that's basically just to stop fermentation. Um, and yeah, you can raise the alcohol to a certain point where you kill the yeast without having to use the tablets. But some of it's going to survive. It's going to try to survive at a little stress and probably give some off flavors potentially. Yeah, it just depends. You know, it's process. I don't know. I've always drank Absolute. It was probably one of my favorite vodkas. You know, back in the day. Now I just drink my own. Yeah, I know it ain't that Savarsky or whatever Tavarsky. We used to drink that. It's Russian rum. It's definitely not the best herb vodka. Yeah, once you get to a certain point, so it depends on the yeast that you use. So like EC 1118 takes like 18 to 20%. So you'd have to get above that level percent, not proof percent. So that's like 40 proof, right? So you're getting into mixed drink category. When you get to 40 proof, that's like an 80 proof vodka or bourbon mixed with a Coke, half and half, right? So that's 40, 40 proof. So it's like a mixed drink. So it's a little bit higher than you think, when you start looking at percentages versus proof. So the EC 1118 is good to 18 to 20 proof or percent, I'm sorry, which is, close to 40 proof. Yeah, so you're going to have to take it more than 15 because that's only 8%. And, at bread yeast can almost survive that. So you're going to have to take it up above 40, 50 proof to kill all that. It depends on the yeast, right? So if it's EC 1118 or a pretty hardy yeast or daty yeast, it's gonna have to get pretty up there, 30, 40 proof. You're gonna use the sorbate. Now, basically, what the sorbate does, it just neuters the yeast so they don't reproduce anymore. So the yeast that are in there will live out their life and die. So after you add that, um, you don't have to worry about it, and you can maintain the sweetness, right? And that way it doesn't get real dry and get drier as it sits in the bottle because you want to stop that fermentation before you bottle it for more than one reason. A, you don't want that cork blowing up and making a mess of everything, and that whole case of wine just you know pop the corks on it from fermentation building up gas to finally it'll blow that cork off, and that's a mess. So yeah, you want to stop the fermentation before you go into the bottling. Right. Now, if you do that, be careful about how you make it in the process, because you may have to, if you're fortifying, that's you're going to have to buy a product, because they're not going to let you make the alcohol to fortify with, if you with a wine company, because you're only going to be licensed to make wine, and there may be a certain limit proof, but you're going to be paying tax based on the proof. So the higher the proof, the higher the tax is going to be, and you turn out some high proof wine, you'll be paying high taxes on it. That's why, a lot of these wineries will kind of cheat. They'll say their, proof's a little less than what it actually is. That way people like it, but they don't pay as much tax on it. But yeah, that's how that works. Yeah, you can make his apple jack's probably, and peach jack, probably the two of the most jacked fermentations out there. Easy to do if you live in a cold area, or have a big deep freezer, or somewhere you can freeze it. Or I mean, you can get box wine and freeze it and increase the proof. But yeah, and yeah, it's definitely a good way to increase the proof, but it's technically considered freeze distillation, and it's still illegal. That's crazy. Yeah, it depends on the yeast. Right. Yeah, it definitely depends on the alcohol tolerance of your yeast. So that's probably about a 16%. So you're probably going to get near probably 35 proof, 16%, probably 32 to 35, probably going to be a little less than EC 1118. But yeah, with your wines, get away from the bread yeast and stuff, and start using some some wine yeast for sure. You definitely, unless you just like that bread, that flavor. I'm not saying it's wrong, but most people tend to prefer, like, try some, experiment with some of the Red Star products. They have some really good yeast, and it's pretty simple. Like the Premier Rouge is good for your dark fruits, and the Premier Blanc is good for your lighter fruits. And I think they've changed the name to those, but if the package is red, it's usually for the darker fruits, and so if it's yellow, it's for the lighter colored fruits. They kind of color code it. And try other fruits. The Lalvin makes some. Even Angel, is making one. I didn't know that they had huge variants of yeast. So I guess that's going to become a little bit more popular now. But never experimented with those. But Lalvin and Red Star make some excellent wine yeast. Yeah, and a good point. With some of your distiller yeast, you're going to get a flocculation, that a lot of yeast bed that you don't want. And a lot of these wine yeast are designed and selectively bred for low flocculation, and it's definitely going to be better for you in that regard as well, for sure. What's going on, Michael? Good to see you, brother. Absolutely. That's perfectly fine. Or you can just put it in a thumper and just let it come through with whatever you got. Now I will say, I wouldn't, like, put a good brandy up there and then just put all the mixed tails in it, because it's going to kind of muddle, and ruin the flavor of that brandy if you're trying to pull that one flavor off. But yeah, for making vodka, perfect. Just proof it down and, make sure it's 40% or less or 80 proof or less. And yeah, put it on a column and make you some vodka out of it. Excellent thing to do with it. But if you got some just corn liquor, just regular corn liquor that you're going to run, yeah, you can put that mixed stuff in the thumper and it might give it a little character, but it's not going to ruin it, right? Um, Especially put a little cream corn in a infuser and put your tails in the thumper and run it through some cream corn. It'll clean all that up and it'll work out pretty well. But yeah, that's what I used to do with tails is I always just saved them but I was always running corn liquor, right? And then mashes. So it was basically corn tails going into a corn liquor. But yeah, it works out well that way. It just increases you really don't tell a lot of difference in your taste because it's easy to separate those heavy oils out of there. So now, yeah, tails. Okay, so you don't have a lot of. I don't say put the heads in mind. A lot of people will save their heads and their tails, and it's called feints. I never really kept the heads for anything. It's like, I know there's some alcohol in there, but it's just not worth the time and trouble to try to get it separated from those heads and that off flavor. And I just don't know why anybody would want to carry that flavor. I mean, the tails, have a, you know, musty flavor, but it's easy to separate those oils, that you got in the tails from that ethanol, a lot more so than it is those high volatiles in the heads. So, yeah. Yeah, it's actually a lot easier than you think. So when you get done with your run, first thing you want to do is get you distilled water, and you want to take that yeast and clean it up, right? So you've got the yeast bed and what's left over in the bottom, right, is your yeast bed. So you got live yeast in there and you got dead yeast in there. So and you're going to have some particulates of whatever you ran. So you can strain off a lot of the corn particles or fruit particles and all that, running it through a strainer. The yeast is going to be like milky mix in water and it's going to go right on through. Um, and then rinse it. Get the alcohol out of it so it has a better chance of survival, and just kind of rinse it out and you can store it that way and feed it a little bit every once in a while. Give it a little sugar to eat and a little bit of nutrient. Of course, there's going to be enough dead yeast in there usually that you're not going to need much nutrient. So you just spoon feed it a little bit of sugar every once in a while and let it off gas and just slowly. There's some great videos. I think Alan Bishop, he's going to be on in about 10 days on the 20th. And we're going to, he talks a lot about saving yeasts and keeping them in the copperdana, is what it's called, or a yeast brink. And yeah, you can just, spoon feed them little bits of sugar to keep them alive and propagating and, keep the, you know, all the conditions, right for them. And yeah, you can keep them in the refrigerator, and refrigerate them, and they'll go dormant. And then when you bring them out, feed them a little bit, get them activated, and use them. But yeah, a lot of people, like in sour mashing, that's why you definitely want to be careful not to pour any hot liquids into your sour mash, or you put that back set on there, make sure it's cool. That way you don't kill that yeast off, right? So you can just continue using that yeast and the dead yeast in there that's in there for nutrients, and just perpetuate that thing all, and that's why you also want to run, it all the way down. When you're using that back set, you want to run it down to lower alcohol, and run the tails out. That way you don't have a high alcohol content in that back set that you're putting back, into that sour mash, because that'll kill them out too. Oatmeal, awesome. Pure oatmeal. Um, I would add the liquid smoke last. I wouldn't use that in the actual fermentation process. If you want to experiment with that, I would add that right before it goes into the boiler. But oatmeal's fine, but you're going to definitely need to use some Sebamil or Sebstar uh, where's my list? I got to get some. I haven't used them yet, but Visco Seb, that's the one I was trying to think of. Sebflow and Sebamil, which will help break down the glutens because oatmeal and wheat and rye and barley kind of high in glutens and they get real kind of gooey. So you can help break those down with that, and it works real well. According to Clint, now I've not used those yet. I'm going to get some. I do use a lot of wheat and I do use oats, but it's 10% or something like that, along with my corns and stuff. But I love using oats for the soft mouthfeel. But I've never done 100% oat. I would imagine it would get pretty messy and sticky. So you're definitely going to want to get some of the Seb meal or the Visco Seb. I'm sure Clint's already helped you with that. I hadn't scrolled down yet, but yeah. And as far as walnuts and almonds, yeah, absolutely. I post with those. I'll soak some liquor in those, and you can get some tannins off the nuts as well, and add a little bit of color to it. But yeah, I like the flavor. Yeah, yeah, they will. And I'm 30 behind. I'm just going to scroll up. And, yeah, you're going to get some interesting oils, off the nuts, and probably not going to be, going to have to clean the steel out, but probably maybe not something that's going to taste as great initially, but once aged, once those some of those esters and oils and acids and oils have a chance to kind of work together and esterify, can make some pretty interesting flavors, but definitely not something that you want to overdo, right? And get a lot of oil. But it sounds interesting, something to experiment with for sure. And yeah, most of us have. Yeah, you just want to keep the temperature. You don't want that dehydrator getting hot, um, and you don't want your yeast getting above a certain temperature, or they're going to be come 100 degrees. They start dying off. So what you just make a little evaporation tray and just spread your yeast out and just let the let the water evaporate, and you can just scrape your yeast off. It'll just be like a little residue, kind of like how they do tannins. They get tannins that way. You can do the same with yeast, but they'll live in water, a buffered water solution. Just um, keep the pH, in the 5 to 6, and just spoon feed them a little bit of sugar every once in a while, and keep them stirred up, and you can propagate your yeast for a long time. And like I said, Alan Bishop has some good videos on that. Check him on some of his YouTube videos and stuff. We'll talk to him about that when he gets on here, though. It's something he's been into, and you know, him and Bam Bam, and I've talked about it, and Bam Bam and I talked about it, and going to distilleries and stuff, and just taking your little swab. It doesn't take much to start a propagation. I mean, you literally take a Q-tip and swab it real good and get it good and coated with that yeast, and take it back and build that yeast up and what you got on there, and feed it, and it'll start multiplying and oxygenate, and give it the nutrients, and it'll start reproducing, and before you know it, man, you'll have a good culture of yeast. And I guess you can keep it on a petri dish too. Yeah, just do a starter, make a starter, and if it doesn't start, then you know it's not as active, and you're going to need to use a little bit more than normal. Camden tablets, now that's not sorbate, that's potassium metabisulfate. So potassium metabisulfate will kill your yeast. Potassium sorbate will neuter them. So both used for different purposes. Campden tablets are also used to disinfect. So it kills a lot of wild yeast off. It'll kill basically, a lot of bacteria off, things like that. A lot of times people use it at the beginning of a winemaking to kill everything off. I tend to just use hot water, but a lot of people don't want, we were talking about vacuum distillation and how temperatures can take some of the flavonoids and terpenes and a lot of these polyphenols and other things away from, you know, florals and other notes away from fruits and stuff if you get them too high temperature. So you put that 160, 80-degree water on it, it's going to knock down some of those flavors, right? So a lot of these purists like to instead use these Campden tablets or potassium metabisulfate to kill everything off. That way they don't, lose a lot of the character from the flavor. Definitely don't want to overdo it. You want to use the right amount. But yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, you can save your yeast. Rinse it out, get the alcohol out of it, put it in a jar with water, and feed it, feed it a little sugar every once in a while, keep it alive. But don't keep the cap on it in the refrigerator because it still will, even though it's dormant, it'll still kick off a little CO2. So you can maybe do the coffee filter and then the rim just to keep stuff out of it, but let it breathe kind of. Yeah, most of if it's a distiller's yeast, it'll activate like at 90. 90 is a good temperature. If you put your finger under a faucet, anything that feels warm to your finger is above your body temperature, so you don't want to use that. Anything above that feels warm to your finger. Now, if it feels cold to your finger, it's going to be less. But if it feels neutral to your finger, just a little bit cooler than that, and it'd be about the perfect temperature to start your yeast and activate your yeast, right? And some yeast you really have to and need to activate it that way instead of just dumping it on top because it stalls before it ever gets started and it doesn't have a chance to multiply. So you get that jar, you put that sugar in there, and you give it a good shake, get that oxygen in there, and it's got that sugar and oxygen, and man, it'll immediately start breeding. And put it in a pot or something, and take that lid off. Don't leave that lid on when you do it, but put it in a big sauce pot or something, stock pot, because a lot of times it'll foam over, but just let it sit and work for 30 minutes to an hour. And if it's not foamed up and almost over, and you can rinse the pot out with your mash, if it gets into the stock pot, that's fine. It's not going to hurt anything. Just take some of your mash and just stir it around and just pour it. But yeah, definitely using starters is the way to go. That way, from the get go how viable your yeast are and if you're going to need to use a little bit more. Yeah. Temp and pH, most important two factors. And ow, gravity, damn, hit my finger. Yeah, yeast logs, awesome. Yeah. Yeah. Reed, and I think catching bait or popping lines or Gary, he made some videos on propagating as well. That's real good. Him and Alan Bishop both did some good videos. He likes to propagate and go out and like Bam Bam, he'd go to these distilleries and take him a little Q-tip and I kind of put a bug in his ear and he go to distilleries and take that Q-tip and rub it around and put it in a little baggie and take it home and grow their yeast. I'm sure they wouldn't like that if they knew what he's doing, but it's hard for him to tell. You gotta, you know, I guess you could wear those white gloves in there and just rub everything. Yeah, I just have to wear my gloves, my hands, whatever. What's going on, Richard? Yeah, everybody, most of the people do. I probably get maybe 7 or 8% of my viewers are live, and then the rest of them watch it, listen to it later, and that's awesome. But I like it when people come in and bring their questions. But it's good to see you, brother. Hello to you and Charlene. Hope y'all having a good evening. Hot tamale candy to post flavor with. Heck yeah. And those little red hots, man, those be good too. Hell yeah. Yeah, I wouldn't fool with it too much, Steve, be honest with you, brother. I would put this potassium sorbate in there, or the metabisulfate, and why your gravity is like 1.005 or something, just a little bit above zero. You don't want it to get it to 1.0, so maybe at 1.010, start adding that because it's not really, when you're wine making, your proof fitting is important, right? It's the character and the flavor of the wine, and really you're going to get enough alcohol in there, even if you go from 1.06070 to 1.010. You're going to get plenty of alcohol in that wine, more than most wines. So stopping it while it's still sweet, and so it can maintain some of that sweetness, and even you can do what's called back sweetening if you don't do it soon enough, and it kind of gets almost to the point where it's dry, but not real dry. You can, after you kill the yeast, you can start adding some sweetness back to it and not worry about that yeast taking off again because it's been killed off, right? So um, I wouldn't fool with it too much and adding alcohol and doing all that other. I just add that potassium sorbate or metabisulfate, probably sorbate, um, and kill the yeast or neuter the yeast and let them kill off and die. And then you know let that take its effect. Proper dose it, and then check your gravity and your flavor. And if you want to add a little sweetness to it, you can take some concentrate, frozen juice concentrate, thaw it out, and add a little bit of that concentrate flavor in there to get some of that flavor back, right? I mean, there's no rules. So yeah. But then you're going to have to let it settle, right, before you bottle it. You're going to have to let that settle out because there's going to be particulates even in that, and you're going to have to let that settle out, and then degas it, and yeah, it'll be good. Is that kind of like the Boca? I'm guessing. Yeah, we we made a lot of blackberry jams and jellies and brandies. Yeah. How's it going in Sweden? Hello. I'm sorry I'm so far behind, but welcome to DIY, Distillers DIY. Hope things are going well over there. You can never have too many. Oh, hell no. Well, I tell you what, if they become such a burden, man, let me know if you got that many in. But it's tough picking them. But man, I love me some blackberry wine and brandy. And I tell you, Wes, old Sandman makes some good blackberry brandy too. Well, I hope they're the right kind now. You gotta make sure you got the right juniper berries. I just scrape it off and let it keep going. I mean, it depends on what kind of mold it is and what it looks like. Yeah, exactly. Just skim it. Hibiscus and honey. Awesome. Right. So yeah, you can pasteurize it, get it up to a certain temperature, right? And kill the yeast off. But they found, especially Jason, with this, try using the potassium sorbate next time because that high temperature, getting it up to that high temperature, close to boiling, 160, 80, or 200 boiling, it really will take some of those floral notes away that you're used to, unless you vacuum boil it. Um, but yeah, it's going to take some of those flavors away. So if you can use that potassium sorbate, most of that'll gas off, and you won't really be able to taste it after a few days. But it definitely works. And right, so yeah, definitely try to use the potassium sorbate method. Just neuters the yeast. Eventually, they just get old and die, and they just don't reproduce anymore. So they all just die off, and and you don't have to worry about raising that heat up because that heat will take a lot of those floral notes that you're wanting from that hibiscus away. So try using the sorbate and compare and see how that works for you. Oh, I hate to hear that. Yeah, that just happened. Yeah, that happened today. If you're a deadhead, you know. Well, prayers to his family. I hate to hear that. Yeah, Bob Weir. One of the Grateful Dead founding members. Yeah, him and Jerry making some music again. Yeah, it sucks. Yeah, I need to. JJ, send me a link. I need to put all these calculators and stuff. I'd like to make a little page full of links for people to use a lot of these because they're very handy. And I've got some I need to post, and it's grain calculators for um, everything from the diastatic power and how much to use and ratios and things like that. So yeah, any of these calculators are good to have. Also, trying to find a good conversion table. I guess I might just have to scan one that comes with my hydrometer, but for temperature adjustments, I get a lot of questions on that, and I'd like to be able to post one of those up. So I guess sometimes when people buy their hydrometers, they don't get the a little temperature adjustment chart. So I need to find those and add them to the file. I'm gonna make a note of that, or I will forget. But I'd like to make a little page of links for calculators. Um, and there's a lot of different calculators out there, but yeah, need to add to the files. Good, good. That's what you use with your mead is EC1118. It's good. Try some Lalvin D47 with your mead next time, Jason. If you want to try something different, it especially because you like florals, you'll definitely appreciate that. That D47 will definitely work well with the hibiscus and honey that you got. Try it out. I think you'll be pleasantly surprised and pleased with your selection. It's really good with that. And that's what people note about it is use in meads and its floral notes. That's one of the things it's really known for. So give it a shotty shot. See what you think about it. I think you'll like it. Good, good. Yeah, a lot of people don't know. Not all juniper berries are okay to use in your botanicals. So you got to know what the tree is, and you got to be really, really astute at identification because some are toxic. I mean, not necessarily kill you toxic, but make you sick and give you some issues, right? And they're very common. The bad ones are very common. So yeah, be very careful. So you're gonna put that in a box, man? Little box wine, Steve's box wine, DIY wine. You can brandy or drink it as it is. I like it. There are like a couple of different varieties. I'm not sure, but I'm I'm under the impression that there's only like one that isn't. So definitely do your research on that and know what you're doing. And it's that way with a lot of botanicals and stuff. Definitely be careful and know what you're doing because it's 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 good to experiment, but sometimes experimentation can lead to mistakes and sickness and even death. There's a lot of people that learned a lot of these things the hard way. And Right. Yeah. EC 1118 it's a champagne yeast. A lot of people don't know that, but it's a great yeast. Is for if you just want to have one yeast for wines and stuff, and you don't want to experiment with different yeast for different notes and stuff, EC 1118 is really tough to beat. It's very hardy. It's got a great range for pH. It's got a great range for temperature. It doesn't stress easily, so it doesn't necessarily. It's fairly low flocculent. So it's a really good all around yeast. If you buy two yeast, get Daty for your grains and get EC 1118 for your fruits, and you're done. If you just want to have two, those are the two to get. Get Daty for your grains, and then EC 1118 and it's cheap. It's easy and get great results. Not won't be the best, but it won't suck either, and so both of those are, you can't go wrong. But I do encourage people to experiment, especially when you start making some specialty stuff like meads and stuff and melomels and stuff. Yeah, definitely want to try some of those Lalvin, like the D47. Really, really, if you do a mead, it's and certain ciders, it's good in that as well. So experiment around with some of your yeast. It really adds a lot to the flavor. It's more important than people think. That a lot of people think, oh, yeast is yeast. All it does is just eat the sugar and make alcohol. Doesn't really give anything. It does. It really does. Yeah, yeah. Just get you a small packet. You don't have to buy a big brick. Just buy a packet and test it on a small scale and see what you think. And you can also take that small packet and propagate it and make a brick out of it, right? Yeah, you definitely want to, man. Definitely, you definitely want to. And wine's a good, it's legal. That's the best thing about it. It's good. It's a lot of people like it. It has a big acceptance. It's a legal hobby, and you know, and they come in and catch you with wine. They can't say shit, right? It's legal. They can't even catch you with beer. Nothing they can say. But if you do sell it, just do make sure that you keep a note on it, because even hobbies, you have to report those to your taxes. But you can write off your expenses if you do that too. So um, basically, you won't end up paying any taxes, and you can write off, all the equipment that you got and keep from paying tax on it. But then it gets it gets the start raising some eyebrows. But yeah, if you just note in your taxes, hobby income, they ask you what it is, I make wine, sell wine. No, they don't care. They don't give a shit. Just glad you paid. Yeah. Yeah, that's exactly right. If it doesn't work out as a wine and it's just not that good, run it. I like that, JJ. That's a fact. Bombay Sapphire. Tell you, Lisa Lowry's got some interesting gins, some really good gins, and there's a lot of good gins that are coming out that's not all juniper berry and all piney tasting. There's a lot of good floral and a lot of interesting uh, combinations coming out. And like Fibly, made some with a lot of like a lot of the lemon peel, orange peel, and a lot of different um, botanicals other than the juniper berries. Yeah, and I encourage all you younger guys, don't wait, don't hesitate, start propagating and growing. Grab every peach pit and a bad peach and try to grow it and freeze it and start a tree and plant all the bushes and all the fruit trees you can. If you got family property, you got property, you know, hell, even if you want to go out on public land and plant it somewhere and just, you know, plant your little grove and just in the middle of nowhere, and you'll know it. The deer will know it. A lot of the animals know it, but you know, I don't reckon there's any laws against it. I'm sure there probably is. They're so fucked up in a lot of places, but yeah, I think we should, you know, be planting a lot more nut trees and a lot more fruit trees in our national forests and stuff. Absolutely. I'm gonna start calling me Johnny Appleseed. I'm gonna cross the U.S. planting apple trees everywhere. Yeah, hit that like button and subscribe if you haven't. Follow us, and you'll get those notifications when we go live. And if you're not already, go to Facebook and join DIY Shine in Steel Building and the Moonshine Militia. Tell them old Santa sent you, and you can follow up questions anytime, 24/7. There's always some night owl on there at night, or always somebody on there during the day. A lot of knowledgeable people, you know. There it is. I knew you'd come through. Yeah, for those high oak runs, you definitely want to use something to help break up that. It's basically like high temp amylase, that what we use for you know, the corn to break down the gelatinized corn to get those starches converted. Um, yeah, to cut through that sliminess. Like I'm gonna have to get some. So, which of those, Clint? Did you say the best? I think you said the Visco Seb is probably the best one all around, because I need some for, I'm gonna do a all grain, probably do an all wheat vodka because I get wheat pretty cheaply. You can make little bags. I guess you could take coffee filters, cut them up, and put your little, you know, herbals in there, and just fold it and staple it. You know, like they do a tea bag. You know, just use a coffee filter. Yeah, and for those that don't know, you can, you know, you can put your yeast, like we were talking about earlier, how you rinse it and clean it and get it, you know, with the distilled water and get the alcohol out, you know, just mix it up and keep getting alcohol, you know, in the water, keep adding water to it, stir it up real good, let it settle, pour all the liquid off or rack it off, and then pour some more distilled water in there and stir it up, and it'll help get all that alcohol away from the yeast, because that'll eventually kill them, right? And so, and then, you know, you can pour a lot of that off. You can also get, when you stir it up real good and get it all milky, you can float you in some, you know, some oak or some porous wood that's not toxic, and make a log out of it, right? And all that yeast will go into those pores and dry up and become dormant, and they'll live. They'll live there. I mean, you can go to the Arctic and dig through some layers of ice and pull out some matter, and there'll be yeast in there that's dormant. There'll be, you know, probably acetobacters, and there are lots of, you know, organisms and stuff that's just been dormant that can be revitalized very easily. So I'll try to get caught up here. Yeah, if you can stop it before it goes dry, sometimes even if you back sweeten it after it dries, it gets that dry. You know, so if you don't want it to be dry at all, try to stop it. Like, keep your gravity. So this is, you know, patience But at winemaking, you got to have lots of patience in winemaking. But when it gets to that certain point in secondary fermentation, when you get to that 1.1, um, start stopping it then, and that way you won't ever get that dryness, because you can get dry and try to back sweeten it, and sometimes it just makes it sweet and dry, right? So sometimes, stop it early, work on stopping it early. Yeah, but the pasteurization process is something I kind of do it initially, but a lot of people don't like that because it takes away some of those flavor notes. So they're and oxidizes it rapidly, so a lot of people don't, when it comes to the up top shelf stuff, they're real very strict on how they treat those. Yeah, secondary fermentation lasts a long time, Steve. So you do your primary fermentation, and then you rack off the clears once it settles, right? So that'll be a couple of weeks generally with the fruit. Go slow, lower temperature yeast goes a little bit slower, and then you'll just rack it off. So any flocculence at the bottom, you'll want to leave behind. It wouldn't hurt to take just a touch, maybe a couple of teaspoonfuls to, over to the next 5 gallon, to help just keep things going and keep things, fed and along. But in your secondary fermentation, you'll let that go and until it gets to the gravity that you're looking for, right? And then that's when you start adding your potassium sorbate and stopping it. And then you let it sit and settle and sit and age. And then you can degas it and then bottle it and back sweeten it, before you bottle it if you want to add some sweetness to it. Yeah, you shouldn't be getting a lot of metals unless if you filter or use good water to begin with, you shouldn't be introducing any metals or have any issues with that. A lot of people will use, when with winemaking, they'll use a distilled water or a heavily filtered or reverse osmosis water. Yeah, if you do use RO water, you definitely have to add some minerals in there back, especially if you're gonna, you know, make brandies and stuff. But yeah, you add a little calcium and you can supplement RO water and make it decent. But if you've got bad water, you almost, if it depends on what's in it, RO is going to be better than what, the heavy metals or other iron or other things that you have in there that's going to be problematic. So, RO water is not the best, but if you have bad water to start with, it's the lesser of the two evils. Yeah, yeah, you want minerals in there. It's fine. Just don't want iron or candida or what is it? Not candida. What is that in the water? Giardia. Yeah, a lot of things like that. Definitely don't want those. All right, brother. Let me know. I'll bring my buckets and Anna and I'll come down. We'll pick all day, man. There's a winery here that allows you to pick and you keep half and give them half. And that way they don't have to employ. And that'd be a good idea, you know, is just come in and have a pick your own, but you pick it and you keep half, and then you got to give me half, and that saves you the trouble of having to go out and pick, and you don't have to pay somebody. and you get half of all your bushes picked, right? You get to keep half of it, and then somebody keep the other half. But not me, everybody else, but me. I get to keep all the pick, right? But yeah, I've got some property in Eastern Kentucky that's got a shitload of blackberries, but it's 2.5 hours away, about the same, and it's just, but I need to drive there anyway, go check it out. I haven't been up there in a while. Yeah, yeah, you can clone them. Absolutely. Yeah, that should kill the yeast off for sure. Sounds good, brother. Now, what kind of yeast you using, Richard? Shadow name change. Uh-oh. That's not Mark Morgan. I don't know, man. I think it's an imposter. What's going on, brother? I know. I'm not gonna wait. You probably said it already, so I'm just gonna go ahead and do it. Yeah, I'm still way about 20 minutes behind now, not 30. I'd use one or the other. You don't have to use both. And the alcohol may not be enough, Steve. Like I said, you like EC 1118, Saccharomyces cerevisiae banus. It takes like 18% to 20% to kill it. So that's about 40 proof. Are you going to make your wine 40 proof? That's like a mixed drink strong. That's a lot. It's almost half and half, right? So, and you're not going to be able to legally sell that. Awesome. Well, happy birthday. Yeah, can't drink and drive, man. That's the big no-no. Yeah. Yeah, I just use your potassium metabisulfate early to kill things off instead of using the hot water. Um, and especially if you're going for floral notes and a lot of things like that, use potassium metabisulfate and dose it properly. Don't just, a teaspoon is good. A cup has to be even better, right? So no, don't do that. So you got to properly dose it. So you don't want to use too much, just like the nutrients, spoon feed nutrients little by little as you go too. We're learning. So it's evolving industry, man. We're learning and learning as we go. And even the pros, they're learning new techniques, new things. And believe it or not, all these new techniques and things that they're learning, it comes from individuals like us that bring it up and they're like, oh, well, let's test that in the laboratory. And then they take it to a laboratory and do controlled studies and and then take what we've given them and profound on it a little bit and make it work. Yeah, 30% is just 15. So that's, yeah, 30%. Yeah, definitely. That would definitely kill it. What's going on, Wormy? Good to see you, brother. Yeah, he went to Send me a link, JJ, for all these calculators and stuff. I've got some too. I need to add them all to a little sheet. That way we can put it in the files and just say a list of calculator links. And there's a lot of good links up there that I've used in the past, especially like grain bills. If you don't want to learn to calculate, it's pretty easy to calculate your diastatics though. Oh, you'll definitely get higher alcohol, but with me's like a beer, it's not necessarily always about high alcohol content. A lot of times it's with flavor. So you'll get more subtle notes and flavors with the D47. And well, it's just all based on taste too and what you want, right? If you're shooting for alcohol, yeah, you can't go wrong with using EC 1118. It's definitely, we're 1111. Yeah, they are both really good with honey. Richard knows. And for those of you who don't know, Richard's wife, Honey Bee, Charlene, makes these jars. Look at that. And she makes some tumblers and all kinds of things. That looks like it's made of wood. I mean, that's some nice wood grain. She painted that on by hand. Look at that. That looks like it's made of wood. Really nice. She does great work. Yeah, I got you, bro. I'm a little bit late for the party, but hey, cheers. Drink some of that honey shine. Thank you, Mike. That'd be good once it ages too. It'd be a little better once it has a little time to age and estrify. Sit and age in a jar. That'd be horrible. We can't talk about that anymore, man. We get in trouble for talking about things like that anymore on here, so we can't really delve into it. I guess marijuana's okay, but certain things, can't really discuss much anymore. Yeah. Yeah, I don't, with mushrooms, I've always been really weary. There's just too much risk involved, unless you're really knowledgeable. It's best to leave the mushrooms to somebody who knows, or just get them off the shelf at the store because it's pretty dangerous. Hello, Miss Lisa. How are you? I'm behind 20 minutes as usual. I like that pic you posted. Looks good. It's a good pic of you. Yeah, I didn't have dinner tonight, man. I had a brunch breakfast and made me some biscuits and gravy, sausage gravy, and bacon and eggs. And we had a big old breakfast. And I went to bed and slept a few hours on that. Man, I woke up. Oh, I should never gone to sleep on that. Feel horrible. What's going on, G Liz? Good to see you, bro. Hope you're still with us. I'm just 19 minutes behind now. Catching up. Hope you're doing good, brother. Yeah, you want to get that blue yeast, for the tequila. That's some good stuff. It's special for it, but it really you want to use it. It makes a difference. And like we talked about in the past, a lot of these yeast they'll use enzymes and other things that are specific, like some of these rum yeast, to help the molasses along. I'm sure there's some unfermentables most probable in blue agave. So some of this blue yeast probably help with that as well. Exactly, or at least parks and forest and national forest and state forest. They should plant fruit trees everywhere, and allow people to go out and pick them and like in the old days and enjoy it. Get people out in the woods. It's theirs, right? Their tax dollars pay for this, right? It's their, and it helped solve a lot of hunger, and a lot of people, that the fruit's expensive. You can buy a freaking Happy Meal cheaper than you can buy a pound of apples. It's crazy. So, it's yeah, I think there should all the parks, big national parks, all the national forest, state forest, they should fill them full of nut and fruit trees, man, and instead of cutting them down and considering them a nuisance, and you know, and it would help the game, it'd help everything, all the animals, help the whole ecosystem, big time. Yeah, that's one of my big pet peeves, is them not doing that. I think they should. I think there should actually be tax dollars spent for that instead of, you know, feeding bureaucracies, feed people by planting trees. Hey, but those insects, man, those get eaten by other animals, and it's all part of the system, and those insects feed the bats, and the bats, eat the mosquitoes. The mosquitoes spread the disease, so you never know. You might end up with less mosquitoes and plant more fruit trees and get more, right? I'm crazy. I really do. And even if they're not maintained and pruned properly, they'll still grow wild and propagate and die off, and new ones will grow up around it, and you know yeah, I agree. They probably would in some areas. They'd rather tax dollars go into a fund that they can skim 80% off of, and then feed people with the remaining 20%. Yeah, nut trees, walnuts and pecans. But even in now, a lot of people are too lazy. They'd rather just get that check in the mail and go cash it and go to the grocery store than go out and pick, some nuts. That's they've been spoon fed too long. Yeah, I hear my head shaking. Probably that's my foot bouncing. You hear my chair squeaking. Clint thought I was having stroking out last week. Yeah, make that yeast log. Yeah, but yeah, you plant all those fruit trees, and all of a sudden every orchard, well, you're going to put me out of business. You're going to run me out of business. I see you down there, man. What's up? Let's see. Let me put my headphones on. Clint, what's going on, man?
I don't know if you can hear me, but on my
I can
TV,
hear you.
we're going out,
Your
going off.
internet's going out.
Yeah,
Oh hell, Clint's internet's gone out. He's come on it. Oh, you're on your phone.
yeah, I'm on the phone now.
I'm
I
trying
think
to
it's
add you.
Wi-Fi, or not Wi-Fi, but the cell phone signal.
I'm trying to add you to the damn thing. It's not gonna let me. What the hell?
Well, I'll tell you what.
Wait a minute. Wait a minute. Wait a minute.
Let me get this out of
There
the
we
mic.
go. There we go. There we go. All right,
Okay.
everybody. Here's Clint. He's on here. Everybody now gets to see the face. I scrolled on down to the bottom. I thought somebody was when I seen you jump in there. I thought, man, we got a troll. Somebody's saying some crazy stuff on here. So I scrolled down to the bottom and to see if that was the case.
Well, hello,
So
everybody.
everybody's still talking about fruit. I see. So your internet went down. Well, hell. Tell you what, when I get this game rig going, I might have an old PC if you're interested in buying one cheap.
Yeah, I probably need
It'd
to
be
get
awesome.
one.
It'd be awesome for doing just the like mail and podcasting and stuff like that. It's not going to be I'm replacing it because it's not longer good for gaming and stuff, but it's perfectly adequate for the internet and all that stuff. I let it go pretty cheap if you're interested.
Yeah, yeah, I'll pick one up off you because hell, all I need to do is get online. Uh, I do need to finish building a couple of websites. But yeah, I don't do hardly any gaming, if at all.
So you don't have you just got a tablet, right?
Yeah. But actually, right now, all I've got is this phone, and I've got two other computers back there, an old laptop, but both of them are like 20 years old,
Yeah,
and they just do not work on today's internet,
right. Yeah,
today's web.
these both of these will do Windows 10, so they'll be modern enough to where you can do stuff. But I got 5 or 6 PCs laying around here, older 10-year-old PCs that are perfectly fine. It's just not gamers, right? And
Yeah, that's good.
I do this on my gaming rig. So,
Yeah,
but
I'd take
everybody meet Clint. For those that haven't seen him, he used to get on the shit show all the time, and back in the older days with us. He's been around a long time. My buddy Clint.
yeah, I've been around. I just
I thought New Year's we were going to do a New Year's thing, get you on here, but we didn't get her done. So now, can you see chat on your phone? You can't, can you?
can see who.
The chat and the
No,
comments.
I can see it on the little screen.
Can you read it?
No, it's way too small.
I was gonna say I don't think anybody can read that unless you're on a PC or a tablet.
I got bifocals on. I see where it says, Lisa says, hey, Clint. Hey, Miss
Yeah,
Lisa. Hope you're doing well.
yeah. Everybody's saying what's up.
Yeah, I was going to say, yeah, I'll buy a PC off you. I'll wipe it clean, and then I can put Linux on there, and it'll run. It should run pretty damn good.
Oh, it'll probably I don't know what. I'll clean it up and try to get. I've got one of my sister's PCs and I've got like Dells and ones I built and other ones. So there's some I'm getting ready to replace and some other ones that are decent. They've got enough RAM and stuff. You can do some things, but just do an email and get me a little cheap webcam and that way you can get on here and but we do pretty well as it is. It's hard to for both of us to talk and answer and keep up because then we're just trying to be talking over each other and we wouldn't be able to keep up like we do and I wouldn't be able to do what I do and you wouldn't be able to do what you do if we both got in here and trying to talk and answer everything. We'd just both be behind, right?
Oh, yeah, that's truth. I
Yeah.
do my best to try to keep up with everybody's questions.
Oh yeah, yeah, you did a great job, man. Especially being on
Sometimes,
a phone. That's why I say we get you on a PC where you can use a damn keyboard. We won't have to worry about those auto erects, right?
oh, yeah. Well, this week I downloaded a new app. It's called Futo, and
Right?
it's got to be probably the best speech to text app I've ever used.
Is that what you've been using?
Not Gorilla, uh, Dragon Speak,
Right, right.
and it's free. And there's three different engines that you could use with. Their low grade one, it ain't worth a
Right.
shit.
I
Right
think
now, I'm using the middle one,
I know
and there's
some
one
court
to see better.
stenographers
It's
that use
absolutely
that dragon.
accurate.
Yes, I know some court stenographers that use that dragon speak back in the day.
Oh yeah,
They'd listen to these depositions and have to, speech to text and back then I guess it would do speech to type and it would automatically type what you spoke. It's pretty crazy.
yeah.
That
That
way they
Dragon
could.
was the original one.
Hmm.
I remember using that back about 89 or 90.
Yeah, that's what my stepmother was or was a court reporter, and she used that dragon stuff back in the day to do depositions instead of doing the shorthand and then typing it all out. They used that dragon speak, man. It would just digitally, and then they'd print it. It is amazing for the time. Yeah, it was technology, good technology.
Oh yeah. Oh, and I ran into a guy that I told you
Yeah,
about.
I do too, Mike. Yeah, dragon speaks like what? What'd you say? I need to get that Hickorbilly dragon speak Hickorbilly model or mode. That's what
Joe,
they call us in a lot of places. Instead of hillbillies, we're Hickorbillies.
hey Joe,
Yep.
I ran into a guy at the store the other day that I told about the Distilling 101 podcast.
Yeah.
Uh, he said, "Hell yeah, man, I appreciate it. Tell Joe I said hi, and that I appreciate the fact that he's answering questions." And believe me, I mean, he was just tickled shitless.
Awesome. Yeah, if we can get them on here, man, it's a lot of fun.
Oh yeah, I enjoy answering questions. To me,
Hey, Mud Grip, get in the DIY, shine, and steel building, and you can post and brag about your Franken beverage, man. That's the place for it.
okay,
Yeah, I'm talking to Mud. Mud Grip's talking about. It's too bad he can't post pics here. He's really proud of his Franken beverage. Hey, you should see my Franken beverage, buddy. I got some. Hell, I got the refinery, the beverage refinery, man. It's crazy, but
yeah,
I
not
can.
that out there is not a Beaver, but it's a 4 inch column. I'm going to build me a 6 inch and move the 4 inch over as a second column.
Right.
But yeah, hell, depending on how much water you put to the deflator, the reflux condenser,
Yeah.
you can run it like a pot still,
Hell
or
yeah.
you can 195 proof vodka out of it.
Hey, I get out of just that little column that I showed earlier, this
Yeah.
little 130 $40 column. I mean, I can get 185, 87 out of that with just cold tap water. It's in I guess probably 40, 50-degree cold tap water. So
Oh
if
yeah.
you were to run ice water through that some bitch, man, I'm no doubt in my mind I could get to 190 plus easy. Yeah.
Well, and not just that. If you ran it a little slower, right now when you run it,
Yep.
you do the drip, a stream, or a pretty good flow.
Yep. Hellbilly, he used the blue agave nectar from Costco. I just met a dude in gaming, playing this Arc Raiders the other day. Uh, and this dude works at I don't know what the GP is, kind of a store, kind of like Costco, but I guess it's in another area, and we don't have them here. But it's a lot like a Costco, he said, and they have the blue agave, and I'm like, really? What do you do when it expires? Because I want some expired blue agave. Does it have an expiration date? I want somewhere. I want to find a place that I can get it, a month past its expiration, and let them know, don't dump it. Aldi's and Sam's Club. That's cool.
Hey, Mike
Yeah.
Mason, I don't think you can speak much more redneck than I do.
Shit, man. I tell you, I got the Hickorbilly down, man. Everybody hears me talking. They're like, "Where you from? Texas, West Virginia?" Nope, nope. Yeah, it's like Kentucky. Oh, I never guess Kentucky. I guess unless you've been here, you don't really think about it. But really, it's Eastern Kentucky. It's a unique accent that it's not a lot of other people in any other place has it. And I guess that's why we got so many, country and western country stars, from that area and bluegrass stars because it's they definitely got the accent for the country music.
Yeah,
Lisa's got to
Joe.
run the dogs before the storm. Yeah, it's going across the whole southeast and I guess northeast too. Just starting
Yeah,
to snow. All right, be careful out there.
we had a there was a squall came through about 2 hours ago.
Richard likes it on his toast. Yeah, I've often wondered, I've never used it. And I've often wondered why the grocery stores and stuff sell it. I've never used it because it's always just been so expensive and I just use regular syrup and stuff. But I guess, a lot of people like it on their pancakes and other things.
When I first met you, Joe, I thought you might be from up around Elizabethton or Newport, Tennessee, with
Right.
that accent.
Yeah, yeah. It's not that's not really far from us. So the accent from Eastern Kentucky, in Bristol, Kingsport, Johnson City, in that area, all the way up into West Virginia, Western West Virginia, and West Virginia State, uh, kind of just in that little pocket. There's a lot of Irish that settled in that area, Scots Irish, and there's a
There's a
lot
lot
of
of people up there.
yeah, and there's a lot of terms that we use, a lot of the things in our speech that are old English and old, from the old world, and yonder and holler and a lot of those things, that nobody uses, in other places all over the U.S., but kind of unique to our area. And they've written some books on it, and how we've managed to maintain, a lot of the old English sayings and speech that a lot of other people don't use anymore. It's
Oh
kind of
yeah,
got
my
away
lady
from.
before she passed away, that's where she was born and raised, just south of Johnson City.
Yeah,
And we lived down there in Knoxville. But man, I used to have some good times. We'd go up there to Johnson City or up to Bristol.
yeah,
Yeah, we'd have a ball.
yeah. It's a pretty big area. That was a big city compared to where I was from. Yeah, that was big time, man. Down there, man. That's the big city.
Yeah, now her family, uh, they lived all up in there and up into the tip of eastern Kentucky and just across the hill over there in one of the two Carolinas.
Right.
But yeah, she had some kinfolk lived over there
Yeah, Hillbilly's he's
being
moved
caged
down there.
up.
He's next to Newport down there.
Yeah,
Yep. He made the big move. Guess he's loving the pace of life, man. It's so much slower and more relaxed and easy going and less stress, less dangers. It's just a lot different, man. It's a lot different way of life. Yeah, I gotta go put all my flavors back up at the bar. But yeah, there's a lot of interesting little flavors you can use. I love that salted caramel Tarani. There's some good stuff. And the hazelnut. Both of those do pretty well with some vodka. Yeah, I'm looking forward to trying out my column. I hadn't got it put together yet. I've been so busy doing other stuff, and not feeling well, and doing things, and well. Anyway, I've got brandies to run, so I'm not going to bother with the column for that brandy, but I do want to put it up and run that watermelon through it and some other stuff that's not, all that.
with those type of glass columns like you have, that the bubble plate set in a gasket. Be very
Mhm.
careful when you slide them up in there. Make sure they're even and you don't have no gaps.
Yeah,
And of course, make sure you got your bubble plate to the right side. You
right,
don't
right.
cameras pointing up.
Yeah, yeah. You got to get a little height on your down combers. That way you get a little puddle, on top.
Yeah.
So yeah, you don't want it sticking up, the high side points down yet.
Joe, have you ever tried running perforated plates?
Well, I think these are both perforated and have no, I haven't run it just plain perforated.
Yeah,
Um,
perforated plates, you've got a minimum wattage or BTUs that you've got to put into your boiler
right,
just to get them to, to fill up the damn plates.
right.
But bubble plates are more forgiving. They will hold liquid uh, to a certain degree,
Well, you
regardless
got
of
those down comers they won't overfill because you got that big down comer that'll let it all drain down.
yeah.
Yeah,
Plus, they'll hold enough right there below the top edge of the downcomer that it'll force vapor up through the liquid. But now with a true perf plate, the only thing that's going to hold that liquid on the plate is the vapor or the volume of
right,
vapor going up through it.
right. And the
When
volume of reflux coming down.
vertical,
Yeah, you want to make it dance on there. You want to load your plate properly. You get too much and you got too much reflux
yeah, you
and
got
not enough vapor, and then you get too little, you got too much vapor, not enough reflex. So that's why you can adjust that deflator, and load your plates properly to get just the right amount of dwell time, I guess you could say.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, you got to get that aqueous bed, as they call it, just right.
Yep.
Just about all the stills I worked in commercial distilleries, they use perf plates instead of bubble plates.
Right.
Plates is more of a hobby thing. But yeah,
Well,
if you get some of these
a lot
24,
easier to make a perf plate too. Just
what's
take it.
that?
A lot easier to make a perforated plate too. They can just stamp those out. Whereas
Yeah,
as the bubble plates, you have to load in all the little unions
yeah.
and
Uh,
caps, end caps, and everything. Yeah. Yep.
yeah, for home distilling, you can't beat bubble plates.
Oh no, they're fine.
But I about got away from them. I found that I could use rolled up pure copper mesh
Mesh.
and
Like I
put it.
said, that little column. I can get 185, 87 without even really getting the water cold. So
Yeah,
uh, I just did it too to get a cleaner. Just get a good cleaner and a faster and cleaner. It'll probably be a lot faster than that little
when
two.
you're using a reflux condenser or defumator, it's not necessarily about the temperature of the water that you run through it, but the volume of water. You can
Right,
put 80-degree water through a defumator, and if you're putting enough of it that it's knocking the vapor down, that'll give you 100% reflux ratio.
right,
Or you could put ice cold water through it, and you'd have to slow it down quite a bit.
right.
But
Yeah, I've got a little Y, and it's got valves on each side, and I can adjust cold and hot water, and load it that way, and just kind of adjust it that way, and that worked out pretty well. Like I say, 180, 187, I think I was getting on it using adjusting it that way, and I just load the copper mesh in the sight glass, and I put that copper mesh in there, pack not real tight, but fairly well, and just kind of keep it where it is off, bounced around in that mesh, and
yeah, I usually
worked
put
out real
sight
well.
glass right on top of the boiler, just under the column, so I can watch for pukes. And
Yep.
then if I'm running a whiskey or a rum, I've got a short, like 18-inch by 4-inch column that'll stuff, and I'll do it a little looser. Then I put me a sight glass on top.
Right.
Then it'll, of course, go over to my or up into the reflux column, then over to my product condenser. But same time, I could put that 3-foot on there and pack the copper a little tighter in it,
Yep.
run slower, and pull 195 proof in fill up a jar about every 10 minutes.
Yeah, it's a little quicker for sure. Yeah, but he said he got rid of his copper bubble plates and got stainless ones.
Yeah,
I
to
don't
be
know.
honest,
As long as you use
copper is
that
great
mesh,
for removing sulfur, but
that's it. That's it.
stainless is just so much easier to deal with, less maintenance, it lasts longer.
Mesh is the way to go for sure.
Yeah,
You know,
definitely.
it's easy to rinse that mesh out, clean it out, and then reuse it a few times. It's cheap. When it's done, it's done. You can recycle it, throw it in the recycler. I'm sure they can recycle it and just roll you out
And
some
maybe
more.
the
It's
best
pretty cheap.
place to buy mesh is if you'll go to one of those pest control companies online, you get the damn copper mesh dirt cheap.
Yeah, make sure that
But they
doesn't
use it,
have the steel
they
plates.
use it to like stuff in holes to stop rats.
Yep,
They put it up in holes to stop bats and birds and
yep,
squirrels. And there's nothing on it. It's just pure copper.
yeah. And some, but some of it though,
It anywhere.
I ordered some on Amazon, and it was some copper plated steel. You know, so I learned my lesson pretty quickly on that. So
Yeah.
you got to read real closely, and I think they lied basically. They said it was 100%, and it wasn't. And I don't even think they're on there anymore. But yeah, you got
The
to be
copper
careful.
plate steel, that shit'll rust on you.
Oh, it's horrible to run a run.
Oh
I
yeah.
ran it and did it. I mean, it literally breaks down during the run. It gets black and dark, and it just yeah, it's horrible. I mean, it may be fine for furniture for scrubbing, you know, and
Oh yeah.
refinishing furniture and stuff like that. Is what they use it for. But yeah, for that it sure messed things up.
Well, hey,
Certainly
Joe,
did.
I'm gonna get off here. I'm about to go get that dinner out of my
Yeah.
car.
All right. Yeah, it's about time to stop
Really
anyway. We're
appreciate
getting pretty
that.
close to
Meet
11.
people so I can meet everybody.
Yeah, it's good to yeah, everybody got
That's
to
what
meet
I'm gonna
Clint. Maybe we can get Alan Bishop on here. We can all three get on and do a chat, the three of us. That's going to be on the for those I haven't told yet. Alan Bishop's going to be here on the 20th
on
of
a,
January, on Tuesday, January 20th. So 10 days away. So
all
that should
right.
be interesting. Yeah, we'll get Alan and Cliff all on here, Clint on here, Clintress on here together, and we'll all do a little.
I wonder if Alan has ever worked in the Strand Street Distillery out in Galveston, because I swear to God, he looks familiar.
I
I
don't know.
worked there.
I don't think so. I think he's been an Indiana boy, pretty much been around Indiana life. He came to Kentucky. He worked for an outfit out of Kentucky for a while,
Yeah.
or maybe they had something. The outfit out of Kentucky may have had something local to him there before he went to French Lick. But I don't know. We'll have to ask him. You know, it's
Well, I had to ask him.
check that resume out. Yeah, yeah. But
Yeah, I'd like to meet
go
him.
ahead and call it time. It's good. It's about time to call it. I'm surprised. The way I felt at 7:30. I didn't even think I was going to do the podcast tonight because I felt horrible, and then started feeling a little better. So I said I gotta get on here. Anyway, it always makes me feel better getting on here and chatting with everybody and hanging out. So that's good medicine for me. You know, getting on here and visiting with my buds, all my friends on here. And I appreciate all of you for coming in and tuning in with us. And we'll be back Tuesday at 8 o'clock Eastern. And hope everybody has a great weekend and a good safe one. And try to stay out of the downtown if you live in urban areas, man. Things get a little crazy in some of these places. Not going to get too involved, but yeah, it's just sad times we're living in. So everybody stay safe and happy shining. We'll see you all Tuesday. Tuesday, what day is it? Tuesday the 13th. So we'll be back this Tuesday 13th at 8 Eastern. So good to see everybody hit that like button. And again, go to Facebook and join DIY Shine and Steel Building. And love to have y'all. We got a pretty good sized group. We're growing real fast, and we're encouraging everybody to get in there and ask your questions there as well. And a lot of times like Mud Grips was talking, you want to post your steel picks in there, you're welcome to. Um, Steel picks is fine. I'm gonna be honest with everybody. A lot of people like to post videos of them running, and I would discourage that. So if you're running, uh, maybe not the best of ideas, unless you're in Missouri where it's actually legal, and in which case it'd be perfectly fine too. So anyway, it's great seeing everybody. I hope everybody has a great weekend, and we'll see you cats here on Tuesday. That for me and Clint, both here live. So good night.
Hey, I want to thank everybody for showing up and asking all the questions you do.
Yep.
If it wasn't for you guys, me and Joe would be sitting there twiddling our thumbs at night.
Yep, this show's for you. This is your show. This isn't mine and Clint's show. This is your show where you come and you ask the questions, and we'll highlight them and give you stuff to ask you questions or answer. If you have some answers, or sometimes there's going to be some things we don't know nothing about, like the Sterling engines. The guy asked earlier. I've watched those. I do know. I'm pretty sure there was a Sterling engine in some of these old World War II fighter planes, but I guess that was spelled with an E instead of I. But anyway, it's always interesting. We get all kinds in here. But anyway, everybody have a great weekend. We'll catch you on Tuesday night. Peace out. Sign on.